Hero's just someone who doesn't give up. Your dad said that. He was right. Now it's your turn. Go be a hero, Miles.
Okay, let's do this.
Hello, everybody, and welcome. My name is Ken Norman. I'm the program director for Animation Online. You can see here we are at the at-home edition of this episode. Tonight, we definitely have a guest speaker. His name's Nathaniel, and he's with us from Insomniac Studios. And you can see everybody started to Discord me as well, so I'll make sure I set my stuff turned off. Thank you. Nathaniel, you can go ahead and turn on your camera. There you go.
I'm here.
He's here. There he is, the man of the hour. So before we get started, just a couple of quick things. This new series is called Animation Alley. We're using this mainly to promote basically community. I want to promote arts in general. I want to promote togetherness. I want people to want to strive to make better artwork. That is the ultimate goal of these obviously community events that we are doing right here. And I want to encourage everyone that is participating right now to put a little bit more time into your community building and peer groups. You have no idea how much the people you know make a difference in this industry. So spending a couple extra 2 hours a week on a Discord hangout in a group of just sharing your screen with them and working on something that's maybe not even class related, it's just artwork in general, will be huge. Nathaniel and I have known each other. I've known Nathaniel for almost, oh goodness, 14 years. I think it's been a long time. And yeah, that seems about right. I've known him for a very good span of our life, it seems like. But I want to just share with you guys, that's like one of the biggest things. We can lead you guys to the water and show you guys as many tools as possible and talk to you about obviously the industry all day long. But if you're not putting the time in and the effort to actually develop yourself as a skill set to become a better artist, then it's definitely not going to get everything you want out of it. All right. And there's kind of like one of those things where you just kind of have to really want it. And I can't stress that enough, that the grit and determination that is needed also along with your skills in art set, because you could be a very talented artist, and if you're not putting the hours in, it's not going to make any difference at all. So I want to make sure that everybody understands that community is a big part of the animation industry. You're literally an instant message away from getting a job or receiving a art test or anything along those lines. So enough about me talking, of course. Obviously, we got Nathaniel here from Insomniac Studios, and I think it's really great. The trailer we just saw, I mean, everybody should be pretty pumped about Spider-Man. I mean, I think it looks pretty awesome. And if you look at even anything that is Insomniac, yeah, super pumped. I'm reading all the chats. Anytime during the presentation, if you got a question, feel free to use the Q&A option to basically ask questions, or you can put it in the chat and I will try my best to answer it. There's tons and tons of people in here, which is great. I love to see all you guys. So I definitely want to thank, obviously, everybody on the web. I want to thank everybody from campus, and obviously I'm the online program director. I want to thank everybody that's online. And I also want to give a shout out to our instructors. Our instructors, you know, the unsung heroes, they are literally the guys that make it happen with you guys almost every single day. And I think they deserve more praise, and I just want to say I'm very proud of them as well. So I want you guys to understand that's all about this community and how I want to build stuff. But let's just jump right in and talk a little bit with Nathaniel here, just to understand what he does. I mean, Nathaniel, I know you told me you're a principal technical director. Is that right?
Well, artist, principal technical.
Artist. Okay, make sure I get artist in there. So what does that actually mean?
So, and this is one of those things where it might be different depending on what company you're at. But Insomniac's titles for each department start off at associate. Let's just use environment as an example because I'm most familiar with environment. So you would start off as an associate environment artist. Then you would become I believe we've added a mid-level environment artist, and then a senior, and then senior advanced. And then after that, those are kind of production roles. After that, your path would diverge into either a lead role, which is a people manager, or a principal role, which is they're kind of on the same tier, but it's more focused on the craft of that role. And so I've held, actually, we've known each other longer than 14 years because I've been at Insomniac for 14 years. So
Okay.
actually, we might be close to 16 or 17.
Wow.
Because I've been in Insomniac for 14 years, and over those 14 years, I've held most of that ladder. I started off as an environment artist at an environment artist level, and rose through the ranks of environment artists. I became a principal environment artist, and I was a lead environment artist for a while. And then I moved over, and I was a creative director on two smaller titles for a while. And then just recently, I've moved over to a principal technical artist role. So
That's awesome. That's
I've
so
gotten to
amazing.
do everything I've wanted to do. So
And I promise you, he did not have this great beard when we started knowing each other. He was, clean shaved.
no, this is a quarantine.
So let me ask you a couple questions, just because we are obviously Los Angeles Film School. Probably a couple quick questions out there is going to be, is what you're doing now what you actually thought you would be doing when you graduated from school?
When you graduate from school, you know just enough to get your foot in the door. And I think that's important to kind of have that mindset, is that when you get that job, that's when a whole nother education starts. And so I guess my point is I didn't even know that this job or the type of work I'm doing now existed when I left school.
Yeah.
Or even jobs positions that I've held, they were maybe slightly different than what I expected from when I was in school. Like when I was in school, I was never really into, for example, like the material side, material authoring, and later in my career that became something that I really dove into and really enjoyed. So I kind of think of it as two educations. Like you get your education to get your foot in the door, and then once you get your foot in the door, you gotta learn every day. Every day you're learning.
So you would say over the 17 years of us learning, you have been a student for all 17 years?
Oh, most definitely, yes.
Oh.
Because you know what? When we use Maya 4,
Yeah.
when I went to Full Sail, no one's looking for Maya 4 artists anymore. So.
So that's a good way to think about it. Technology is always growing and changing, so that's something to really keep in, and that's where it's really coming into where you need to learn the core concepts and spend time harnessing your craft. It really comes down to the art that you can produce. I agree with you. So I mean, obviously you gave us a little bit about your background about Insomniac, but a couple questions that came up already. Some people are asking, even before school, when did you decide that you wanted to be an artist? I mean that's like a good question to ask, because it's kind of like your journey to it. Did you start school thinking, wow, I might want to do this, or did you already go into it full commit? Like at that point you already knew this is what I'm doing for the rest of my life? So
well, we can dive in, and again, this is my journey, so it's not
Yes.
that you have to have had this journey. So
yeah,
I work with people that had drastically different journeys. I knew I wanted to be an artist before, I would say like high school level, but I didn't know what kind of artist. And so I, where I was, the first thing I started doing was, Full Sail was not my first school. I went to community college for just graphic design. And when I first started going to the community college, I was working, I think I was working at a lumber mill. So it's something, right out of high school. I later got a job at a print shop, just doing like basic graphic design, like logos while you wait kind of thing, like a Kinko's, but maybe a little more upscaled than a Kinko's. Mm-hmm. And so I was taking graphic design classes at night. I got married and had my first daughter, and so I was working full time during the day, going to school at night. Later on, I started working for an advertising agency doing website design. This whole time I was doing 2D stuff, and that was just kind of like in my mind what an artist could be. If you wanted to be an artist, that's what you could do to make money. And I was working, and I remember I got to a point where I couldn't take any more arts classes at night because I had taken them all, and I still didn't have a degree. And so I started taking programming classes just to keep taking classes. And so I was taking like these really boring, like server management, like Apache web server kind of like, I was starting to veer, and it wasn't that exciting anymore. And I remember we got to the point where it's like, I'm either going to have to, if I want to get a degree, I was either going to have to quit working and go to school full time so I could take classes during the day, or just stop taking classes. And I didn't feel like I was doing the level of art that I wanted to. Like I was doing website design, for a small local advertising agency, and it was fulfilling. And I felt like I was probably top of the craft there. And this is an advertising agency in like the northwest corner of Arkansas, so it's not even like exciting clients. But my wife and I had a conversation about, well, if I quit working to take classes during the day, what would I do if there was any choice? Yeah. And this is back in the day, and I got this magazine called Mac Addict, and there was an ad for Full Sail. And I remember thinking, well, if I'm quitting working, I could go to any school. I'd go to this school to do 3D, because in my mind, 3D was the next step. And somehow that turned into a good idea, and somehow that happened. And so I quit my job, and with my wife and my 1-year-old daughter, we moved to Florida, and I started going to Full Sail.
Wow. So you started the career obviously already with a family. That was a huge thing. So
awesome. I guess to answer the question, I think we diverged a little bit. Art was always the goal. Like I always knew that was what I wanted to do. I had a little taste of the server side stuff, and it was like, oh, this is terrible. Who are these people that enjoy this? So I think I just always knew I wanted to do something creative.
So I'm going to limit my next question to when you actually started training in basically computer animation. If you could go back in time right now, obviously we determined that it's probably about 17 years now. Okay. If you could go back 17 years and tell yourself like one piece of advice that would benefit you today as a student now to get you where you are now, what would it be? I mean, is there?
I don't know if it'd be anything different, but something I would do more of. And it was, since this question involves time travel, this means like other limitations are
Sure, why not? Let's go there.
So, So it was very hard to go to school with a young child. and a wife. I think that helped me in a lot of ways. Like, it kept me hyper focused. But one thing I do feel like I missed out on was as much, like what you were talking about earlier, as much community. I had a core group of friends, and that really helped, that we were going through together, and we really challenged each other. But I did miss out on kind of the traditional hanging out with other artists, artist time outside of school.
So you think like hanging out with the artists in general, would you consider that hangout time more of doing art? Would that be, or just hanging out in general? Not outside work.
I think I would have still been focused. So I think it'd be doing art, but where I think to kind of distill it down more, where I missed out is there was people that had more time to experiment. Like in my core group of friends, I think we all spent all of our time focusing on art and learning this craft, but they were able to even explore a little more, where all my time was definitely towards school and craft, towards school projects and portfolio, but I didn't have a lot of time to just kind of explore other things.
And because you have a family and you really wanted to keep that eye on the prize.
Extra time was taken there. But
yeah,
I also think that was an advantage, having them to just make me, failure was not an option.
Wow. I mean, I totally get it. Now just to not get you in hot water with Insomniac, obviously, this next question has two parts. What is your favorite game? And I'm going to say at Insomniac and outside of Insomniac. So that way we could keep everything easy for you.
I have no favorite game outside of Insomniac. Well, the whole reason that I went to Insomniac, 14 years ago, was to work on Ratchet and Clank. I was a huge Ratchet and Clank fan. My oldest daughter and I, when she was very young at the time, we played all the Ratchet and Clank games together. So that's. And when I came to Insomniac, I went straight and worked on a Ratchet and Clank game. So just the Ratchet and Clank franchise is very special to me. Yeah. I've worked on every Ratchet and Clank game since PS3. Outside of Insomniac, I really enjoy the BioShock franchise. There hasn't been one in a while. I like that world, and I really enjoyed I really enjoyed the last Far Cry, or I believe within the wilderness with the cult. I'm not a huge Far Cry fan in general, but I really enjoyed that one. I enjoyed that world and that theme. So
I was totally expecting you to say something off the wall like Tetris or something. Oh, that's awesome. What about, obviously we're two sides of the coin here. I mean, most of animation is games and film, especially with technology now. We're getting really, really close to both almost merging. In some places, they're doing films inside of game engines now. Yeah. So what would be your favorite film or TV show?
Oh, my favorite film or TV show. So I am very whatever I just watched is usually my favorite film or TV show. Maybe I have a goldfish mind for entertainment, but during all of this, we just finished 10 seasons of Shameless. Nice. So I was very sad when we finished that, because it actually, the character development in that, I really felt like I miss these people now in my life, even though they're terrible people to be around. And then, I'm blanking on
film.
Yeah, but I really like things with kind of off the wall character development.
Okay, that's fair. That's definitely fair. So, I mean, obviously we talked a little bit about your background. Obviously, I know now that, I've known forever that you've had a family since we've known each other so long, but I guess the real question is more of that home and work-life balance a little bit. So I'm going to ask you before we get into some of the nitty-gritty about your work itself, because I'm trying to make this pretty well-rounded so everybody can have an idea how you relate to people that are at home doing online and also on campus. So like if you think about it, do you have any hobbies that are outside of animation area? Obviously, you told me that you do a lot.
Oh, yes. And I would say more so now than earlier on in my career, because a lot of my free time was focused around my career or just developing skills even outside of work. But now, yeah, I'm my interests outside of that of the entertainment industry are. I still like to create. I maybe have a slight addiction to creating things, but I really like tinkering with stuff. I do a lot of woodworking. I have a wood shop now, and I like machines. I built a few CNC machines. I have a laser cutter. I spend a lot of time making tangible things now. Do a lot of like microprocessor, Arduino, Raspberry Pi stuff. I do a lot of DIY home automation stuff where I build a lot of the stuff myself. I built a whole smart irrigation system. So it's still creating. It is more on the technical side, I guess. But it might be a sickness, but I feel like if I'm not making something, I'm wasting my time. But
yeah, well,
I try to wrap my family in it too. I try to get them.
Well, that's my next part. It's like the work-life balance with family, obviously, especially in this season where most people are home because of the pandemic and a couple of things happening out in the world today. Is it easy for you to work and learn how to cut it off? I mean, it would be the same as the equivalent of an online student. It's like you're constantly home doing your education. Like,
Yeah.
How do you balance that time?
It's definitely a learned skill. I would say, the first few weeks of working from home, I worked a ton just because my stuff is here. And if I had a free moment, I'd sit down, and then before you know it, you've been sitting there for an hour working, on a Sunday morning. And on top of that, like everyone's work has kind of plopped into into their living space too, right? Like not everybody had like an empty room that became an office. So my work stuff is actually the room we're in is in my wife's it's kind of like a sewing room. So I've had to actually just be very good about actually shutting my work stuff off. So that I'm going to sit down for 5 minutes temptation is a little harder because I have to wait for the machine to start up. Because if you don't, you definitely burn yourself out. And I have been burnt out. I feel like I'm always kind of right on the knife's edge of being burnt out. But like I said, if I start to not do something, if I start to feel lazy, then by not creating, I start to feel lazy. And then I have other issues with that.
Well, I think everybody, I mean, even myself, I think we all have those mental block areas or burnout where you have to stand up and walk away. And I want to say that to everybody that's watching, that's okay too. I mean, it's been happening for years, long before us, writer's block. And, it's good to get out, take a walk. For me personally, I don't know about Nathaniel, but sometimes when I'm trying to think of a problem, I just mow the yard, something really off the wall to just kind of clear my mind. So.
Yeah. And now that we're being armchair psychologists about it, like I actually think maybe over the last few years, my hobbies becoming more dealing with tangible things than digital has helped with that, because when I do stuff in my free time, I try not to stare at a screen. And so I have felt better the last few years, before all this. And so those hobbies and those interests that are in different areas, it always surprises me when those still do come back and help me. Making games. It's helped me in so many ways that I can't even count. But that I think that really has helped with the burnout. It's just having something completely different where where I make games during the day, but then my hobby is playing games all weekend. You know, you're still just obsessing over games. So
Gotcha.
I think that difference makes you broadens your knowledge in general, but does help with the burnout.
What about, obviously this works like if you leave work and come home, but what if you're at work and you start to feel a little discouraged, or what are some things that you recommend people doing, or what do you personally do? Do you get up, get a cup of coffee, walk around, or?
So our office culture has become so I'm at the North Carolina office, and our office, there's really not a lot around, but there is like a coffee shop across the street, and there's there's like a little kind of strip of restaurants, but then there's also several just neighborhoods. And so the office culture has kind of been where it's perfectly acceptable for someone to disappear for an hour and go to the coffee shop, sit at the coffee shop for a while, or I like to go walk around, do loops around the neighborhood, weather permitting, and that's kind of, everyone has adapted and started doing that just because of the office, and so that helps. I think just, I'm going to go for an hour-long walk. You know, I will think about the problems I need to solve, so I'm still working. I'm not at a computer hitting keys, but I am, I'm processing, and that helps, right? You get your steps in.
Yeah, get your steps in. Yeah, exactly.
Close the rings on your watch. But I think it is important. That's part of the creative process. Is stepping away and processing.
So I do have another follow-up question to this topic, but I'm gonna hold off for just a second, and let's just switch gears for just a second. Since you talked about work-life culture, working, obviously you've been working at Insomniac a very long time, and obviously you've had some other jobs throughout the years as well. And I'm more curious, what do you consider a most valuable characteristic of someone that you like to work with? It's like, if someone was working with you and you're like, man, I really like that, because you already know you hired them to do modeling or environments or textures, because obviously that's where they're hired. But if you could identify another characteristic.
Yeah, exactly. Like they're already sitting next to you, so they can already do the job, right? Yeah. Hopefully. Exactly. I guess the people that I like to work with, I like to be around, and I don't know how to quantify this, but I like to be around, man, this sounds like really cliche, but I can't think of another word. I like to be around interesting people that, and by interesting, I don't mean like they're wacky or, but people, I guess, down to earth, people that have, maybe like what I was kind of like a broader knowledge than just, they're not just, I think there's a stereotype where people who work in games are just game addicts, where they just love games. That's all they do. But I guess what I'm explaining is just a normal person, right? I guess
nice.
No, which I've worked around not normal people too, but just normal and respectful people that respect you, and people you respect back, and people that are,
okay,
normal.
That's a fair answer. I mean, I've known you a very long time, so I was expecting you to be like, Ken, you're a wacky person, that's why we're friends or something. So
I mean, I describe you though, like you're
yeah. He's like, oh, you're super weird, Ken. That's why I like you. So I think it's great. So, but just looking at a couple different things. So, I do see a bunch of questions from the group, and I'm not ignoring you. I'm just waiting just a second. I will promise I will answer them all.
Well, let me say one more thing on that real fast too.
Okay.
Is there was a point where I realized that I do spend more time around the people before all this, that I spend more time with the people at work than I actually spend time with my family. Because, I'd spend 8 to 12 hours a day with these people. And usually I was maybe with my family a half hour before I left. And when the kids were younger, I was maybe home, 4 hours before they went to sleep. So I think that's another, that ties into your other question about burnout, is surrounding yourself by the right people.
Yeah.
Right? Like, if you surround yourself with people that are very frustrating to work with, you burn out so fast. So,
Yeah. I mean, so what you're saying, let's kind of put this in an education term.
yeah,
So do you think, like for an online student or even people that are on campus that are having to do remote right now, do you think putting themselves in a situation where they're around other artists, like hanging out on Discord or doing a thing, would be a more positive impact on them? Because I mean, I think I personally am more motivated when other people are working. Like I look at something, I go, "Oh boy, that's really cool. I guess I should get back to the grindstone and work on something super cool too." You know,
yeah,
like I think that's like my personal motivation. I can't say that's everybody's, but I get thrilled to see art because I love art. I love art in every form and fashion, and I think surrounding yourself with the same type of thing and those good vibes are important, because if you're just hearing the outside voices all the time, I don't think it really helps, you know, as a whole for me. So maybe for you.
no, 100% agree.
Yeah.
And like what's even better is developing close relation doesn't have to be like super close, but developing relationships with those people so that you can say like, man, that's amazing art. How did you do this? Or how did you, you know, point at the, how did you do that part? Or like that is part of, you know, that always learning. And yeah, surround yourself around those people that are, you know, build that community. And I guess that's what I've gotten by being an artist, is I've been able to surround myself by exactly what you're saying, like respectable people that do amazing work, and I get to talk to them about it. Maybe they do things that I don't do exactly. Like one of my best friends is a concept artist, and I have no delusions that I could ever be a concept artist. But to just be surrounded by somebody that performs at that level and that we can work together, that community is like priceless. So,
well, I saw this one question. It's kind of closely related, so I'm going to go ahead and address it now. One of the people in the, obviously watching the stream right now, asked the question, that close group of friends that you went to school with, are you still close to them? And are they also working in games, or do you know where they're at?
so like the romantic answer would be like, yes, yeah, we're super close. Like that, and then the credits would scroll like, yes, I was the best man at Dave's wedding, you know. No, I never talked to him again.
It's like,
but that's, so I was very close friends with them. I mean, the truth is we're all adults, and adults get busy, or we all became adults and adults get busy. Yes, we're still friends. I don't think any of us is super close. We text once a year, you know. I mean, it's sad,
yeah.
but one of them went into film. One of them went into games. One of them ended up not ever really being in the industry. The one in the games I stayed in contact with the most until he left games. But you know, I still consider us all friends. And the one, like my friend in film, got really heavy into After Effects. So the second I had my first After Effects question, you know, I call him up, or so we have that connection still. But so yes, I mean, they're friends, and I would say they're probably lifelong friends. But the reality is we all four of us live in 4 different states, 3 different time zones. And I have new, closer friends from shared experiences. So,
well, I mean,
we have adult friendships.
I know. I mean, I get it. So this has been your nice therapy session for you. You're probably going to text them all when we get off this stream now. So, but so, maybe save it for that 1-year talk. Hey, we did talk about you. There you go.
Yeah.
So, I mean, let's just kind of, when you're developing a title, because I want to get a little bit more into the development side a little bit now, because obviously we talked a little bit about the home life. Do you think it's important to explore new ideas, or can you kind of give me as much information that you're allowed to tell about kind of the idea of a development of a new title? I mean, we know obviously you had a couple that's been around forever that you guys are doing newer versions of, but some of your newer stuff, or even maybe designing a new feel for some of those older titles.
Yeah, actually, I think a good one to talk about is, so I was a creative director, and it was a small team, so I also did a lot of art, but I was a creative director on the Magic Leap titles that we did at Insomniac. I mean, is everybody familiar with what Magic Leap is, if I say that?
Well, we should watch it. We should do it right now. We should just show them. That's why we're here, and we could do that. So just give me a minute, and we could cue this up, and we can have some fun. So let me see if I can find one. I'm going to do it right now. I'm going to pop this over here. Put it on my screen. You guys forgive me for my slow abilities here to get this going quicker. So there we go. Let me share my screen. There we go.
The rift is stabilizing. Something's coming through.
What is it?
Quiet, you'll scare it. Plug the rift.
Oh, it's so cute.
It's on the move. Switching to tracking sensors.
There's another one. There's another one.
They must be attracted to Subject 13.
You mean like to eat?
Of course not. Probably. Uh-oh. I just picked up a griever.
Put it down.
Quiet, Cecil! It's working! They found the biome!
Aw, they're feeding.
I'm detecting a ton of interdimensional energy. The objects in Test Subject 13 space are full of it. Keep the rift stabilized. This could be our way out. Okay. Readings are holding steady. We'll be fine as long as... Oh no. What is it?
Not good. Strangeless, a game about three fearless scientists who struggle to escape a dimensional vortex filled with brain-eating camels and lunch-stealing co-workers.
That wasn't me! Adorable interdimensional creatures and their exotic habitats fully included.
I think that's great, man. That looks awesome. Makes me want to play it.
So I mean, so what Magic Leap is it's AR. It's the goggles at the end, and it maps your room, and everything exists in the same space as you. And actually, that whole thing was filmed in our office, in AR. And we did 2 small titles, and these were kind of small, very R&D-ish. So they weren't like a I don't know, like a 30-hour campaign by any means. It's a very new technology, and it was kind of, the point of them was to explore the idea of just games and AR. And so like you're saying, there's a lot of experimentation. They were maybe the step past a tech demo, like a tech demo, but with gameplay, and a story. And it was a small team. We did 2 titles. There's a core team of 4. But then we brought in, other disciplines as we need them. But there's mainly 4 of us kind of honing the idea. And we had somebody over all the animation. I was the creative director over design and creative story, and we had someone over programming, and then project management. But we did, a lot of people ended up working on, because we bring people in as we needed them, like getting some rigging and everything. But what was interesting about that was there wasn't a lot to go off of when we started, right? Like, because there's not a lot of games you can reference in AR to say, hey, how did they do that? Or we should steal that idea. So it was the best reference I read, that somebody, this is not my reference, I'm stealing this, but they said it's like developing a web page for a mobile browser before somebody invented the pull down to refresh. Like, now that's such a natural thing, but at one point, no one had made a mobile browser experience.
Yeah.
And so we experiment with lots of things. Like this device is pretty amazing. It recognizes your hand gestures and where your fingers are, and so you can touch things and have them react. And well, you can, if your game, you can make your game react to them. But so you get like the inputs and the positions of fingers, and you get the space of the room. And so there was just a lot of new territory to explore that at the time nobody had ever explored. We were very early on. we were developing this before this device was ever announced. And that was also really cool, just to be in such a secret on the ground floor, such a secretive thing. But even just the idea of like reaching down and like petting a creature, like we went through so many iterations because you think if you reach down and pet it, that's going to be cool. But then it's not cool. And it's okay that it's not cool. And you don't get frustrated and say, well, petting's just not cool. What you say is, what do we need to do now to make it cool? Our first try wasn't it. But you have to know, you have to be comfortable that it's not gonna work.
Yeah.
And that you have to make it work.
This actually goes straight hand in hand with my next question is, I hope you're ready for this one, is how do you deal with deadlines and milestones and unforeseen iterations, like doing it multiple times?
Yeah. I mean, the thing is you can't get frustrated and say that I made a mistake. This was, trying to make this creature that you can't really touch physically, because that was the problem. It's like you just like stick your hand through it. It's not a mistake. You just adjust. So same thing with like with a deadline. Like you have your end goal, but the deadline is not going to move. So now you need to adjust what you're working, how you're going about it to make it work. It is just constantly course correction. So you can't ever say, oh, we just can't get there. We're not going to make the deadline. You just course correct. It's not going to be maybe what your first vision of it was, but you've course corrected so you within those limitations. And that's part of the creativity too, is you've created within limitations. If you don't have limitations, like you'd never get done. You would just iterate.
Yeah, I think most students have in their mind when they first start that all the bigger studios have this like magical workflow and script that just works every single time. Like when I talk to people, it's like, oh, they executed it perfectly. So I guess that's what I'm trying to get at. It's like, was everything always to plan, or was you like, well, we're not doing that again?
It got executed and iterated on and slowly better and better. And then the version you saw is most likely the version that it was at when they ran out of time. Most of the time. I mean, there may be some that may not be the case for everything, but for most of my life, it has been.
So, I mean, again, to relate this back to school a little bit. So, I mean, you could think of this as like a school project or a model, or any of these guys that are working on their demo reels. They're going to have a portfolio when they leave. So they're not going to execute the perfect model of their vision probably in the first time. And I think it's great to hear that you have to iterate in the industry, because these guys should be used to iterating, changing, and manipulating the work too. So do you have any advice for anybody that's got to follow that path in general, So
there should never be a time in school or in the real world where you don't have something done at a deadline. Yeah. It may not be done perfect, but the way you should be working and the way I work is that you rough it in. So you rough it in, even if you rough it in quick, you have something, right? Yes. Like say, let's use in the environment building as the example. You rough it in with just the basic simple geo, nothing's textured, but you have something base level. Maybe it's cubes, but it's functional. You can at least turn that in, right? So you have something, but then that's where you start to do your iterations. You iterate and you bring it up. And I always like to kind of bring it up evenly, because that way, if something happens in your deadline, you're out of time, you don't have like one really done nice tree and then a white vista of nothingness. And then your skill, your craft, as you progress through your career, you're going to become faster at things. You're going to learn new skills. You're going to learn new tools, and so you'll be able to iterate faster and bring that quality bar up faster. Speed is something that's very important in a creative career, and it's the speed of iteration. So you should never just have nothing. Yeah. You may not have something at the level that you were expecting, but you have something.
Oh yeah, I think it's good. At least it's a good advice to start blocking in, rough it in, and keep working. You just keep striving to get it better as long as you have time. Is that what you're basically saying?
Yeah.
So just kind of push as hard as you can, as long as you can. I get it. So, I mean, obviously, you've been at Insomniac a really, really long time and stuff. So you probably have set in one or two demo reels and obviously portfolios, or even looked at some resumes one or two times. So I know it's going to come up, and I know there's probably a couple of questions about it. So let's just go ahead and nip it in the bud now. Do you have any nice tips for some students that they should be doing early? Because some of these guys are still halfway into their degree, and I want them to understand it's like you could start your portfolio literally day one if you wanted to. So it's, you know, just advice in general for that type of stuff.
So your portfolio should be done the same way, what we just explained. Like,
okay,
before you even have pieces in, you can at least start, you know, you're going to need a website, right? Like start your portfolio there, so you can start filling it in and replacing pieces. I think people treat portfolios as I'm going to make a portfolio when my work is perfect, and then I'll put it all in a portfolio. But think of a portfolio as a diary, where it's the work that your level's at now. Mm-hmm. And so, and I did not do this at first either until later, but it should be, this is the examples of the best work I currently have. Even if you know your work's not at the bar, but you can pull and replace things. You know, keep bringing it up, just like anything else. Keep building it. Pull out the old crap, replace it with whatever you have that's better. As far as sending stuff in, I'm gonna let you in on a secret, Ken.
I'm ready for it.
So when you send your portfolio in,
there's only 1,000 people watching right now, so feel free to keep whispering if you need to.
Oh. So, and again, this is my personal take. Looking at portfolios is the worst thing in the world because you still have other work to do, right?
Okay.
So you get dumped, like, you need to hire somebody, but then you get 300 applicants, and you're not gonna just like look at the first 10, but you still have a full day's worth of work on the other side. And so you have to make it as easy as possible. Imagine the person that is looking at your portfolio does not want to look at it. Yeah. And you're dragging them through it. So remove every boundary you can. And the most common boundary is when you send your resume in, you're going to send it in a PDF because no one mails it. If you're mailing it, that's the first thing. Don't mail it. You're sending a PDF. I feel like that shouldn't be said. But your website link, make it clickable. Do not have it not clickable. I don't want to copy and paste. That's like when I'm trying to get through 300 portfolios, like those extra clicks. No, because then if I miss it, or if heaven forbid your resume is an image that you put in a PDF and I can't even copy, those get passed because it's like you had your chance. So remove all the boundaries, clickable links. Just the websites don't have to be fancy. Like even ArtStation portfolios are fine, but when it comes to that, or when it comes to websites, the first thing is don't have a lot of menus to dig through, right? These maybe all sound very common sense, but man, it happens so much where it's like you'll get to like a website, someone's portfolio, but it doubles as maybe their like Flickr page or something, or so it's just send them the link to the portfolio as easy as possible. Once you get there, have enough work to evaluate. Get a lot of portfolios where it's like 2 or 3 things, like maybe their final projects. And maybe that's the only thing they felt comfortable. But that is just as bad as having 1 or 2 things. Is just as bad as not having anything. Like 1 or 2 things feel shady a lot of times because, and if you're a character artist, lots of views. If you're an environment artist, lots of views of one thing. Just give plenty of work to evaluate. No, that's a lot of times you get something that has 1 or 2 things and they were clearly class projects, And then if it feels like a class project, then you start to wonder, like, well, how much did they have to go by? So just the more work to evaluate, the better.
That's fair. So on the website topic real quick, obviously if they're building their own, a lot of people get hung up with like the website design itself. They're like, I'm going to make this look so beautiful, like a theater and all this stuff. Do you guys even care about that? Or does it really just come down to, is it easily functional and I see your artwork?
You know, old me who used to design websites would have been like, yes, it's so important. The me that has to look through them is like the usability is way more important. So like a standard, I mean, any service you go through, like a Squarespace or a Wix, a standard portfolio usually has pretty good usability where it's like, you know, a top section and you can dive in and see more about that project. Like usability is definitely key. And a lot of times your work will get shared, but just kind of think so that usability compounds. Like even if I spent the time to like dig through your site and then I share it with somebody else, now they have to and they might not want to. And so just that flow of being able to see your work and connect it with you is important. So I wouldn't say a blank page with just your work. You know, you definitely need some kind of your name or branding, but I would not get hung up on something completely custom.
I
Squarespace. Here's what we're talking about. Our sponsor, Squarespace.
Let's look at a couple questions from the crowd. I know they've been waiting patiently. So, start if I like story artists, and we're like, if I was going to be a story artist. I mean, do you guys do story artist in house at Insomniac? Do you have that there? Is that a role that sits real close to next to the concept guy?
Like storyboarding and like that. I mean,
more the narrative of your game.
Oh, like okay. I mean, our term is just, it's not very elegant. We just call them writers. Yeah, we have a writing staff. You know, and my first time really working with them was when I was doing creative direction on the Magic Leap stuff. Because prior to that, I had mainly been in environment, but I worked with them very closely, and that was something I actually found really, really interesting. I never really found it that interesting before. Just kind of crafting the narrative. We have a whole staff of them. I'm not quite sure how many, because most of them are all of them now are in Burbank. We did have, one of them was in North Carolina for a while, but I mean, I'll just say a small army. I'm not gonna, I don't know exactly how many, but
yeah, they're ninjas in the closet. You just open the door and you see them all backflipping and stuff. I get it.
Yeah, and they usually work closer with designers and creative directors than artists, but and just like anything that goes through so many revisions from beginning to end of development.
Okay. If someone was interested in that, do you think that you would suggest? Do you have any suggestions towards that, or is that something that you wouldn't really want to touch on?
It's not on my wheelhouse. I know they exist. I enjoyed working with the writer we had on the Magic Leap projects. Other than that, I don't know a lot about.
Fair enough. That's fair. So just kind of working our way down the list of questions here. These are not by me by any means. How hard did you struggle to get to where you are now? If you feel it. It's a deep one.
It's a catch-22. I can't say not at all.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I mean, I feel like it does not feel like a struggle to me, because it just felt like I was always doing, I never had another option in my mind, right?
Yeah.
Like, maybe I'm not trying to say like it's not work if you do what you love or whatever. But it hasn't felt like a struggle because I've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed my career and I've enjoyed the climb. I try not to get hung up in drama, so it's been a pretty pleasant career. So I feel like I've worked very hard. I know I've always looked for areas to grow, areas to improve. I've always tried to take feedback and criticism seriously and not negatively. So I don't know. I don't think I wouldn't consider any of it a struggle. Even when I wasn't succeeding, like right out of school, I didn't go when I graduated from Full Sail. I didn't go straight into the game industry. I mean, it took me a year and a half, maybe 2 years, close to 2 years. So maybe I guess that's a struggle, but I don't think of it as a struggle. That was just a lot of resumes and a lot of portfolio work.
Gotcha. So you put some time in, obviously.
It's a lot of effort. I guess I just don't feel like it was a struggle.
So I mean, like I don't know if this person individual, because they didn't give me a name, but if they're meaning like what you consider like a learning experience or a failure in your in your mind of like that could be a struggle as well. But it's like always trying to push forward. I think that's what it might have meant. But
yeah,
on top of that,
I guess you never. Yeah, you always have to do that. Like maybe, well, okay. Yeah, maybe I'm getting caught up on the terms, but like this is my personal journey would be like never ending self-doubt. Yeah. And you're never good enough. And you see something and you're like, now I got to top that. And very competitive, but not, I consider myself competitive, but not, I guess not outwardly towards others. I'm not like trying to beat other people, but you just got to be at the top of your game and do whatever you can, and utilize it.
Don't let him fool you, people. I play Bomberman with this guy, and he is very competitive.
Yeah, I think you have to be competitive because you need to know you can't not be competitive. I guess you don't need to be a jerk either. I don't know.
So that's fine. On the same topic, someone asked like what kept you motivated. I know you talked a little bit about the outside hobbies and maybe your family that helped you along the way to stay motivated overall, but in your journey in general.
I mean, what kept me motivated early on was like there was no other, in my mind there was no other option. Like it may take me a while to get my first job in the game industry, because that's where when I left Full Sail, that's where I decided I wanted to go. I decided I wanted to be an environment artist for games, and that really, reality kicked in. There wasn't a job waiting for me, even though I had started applying before a few months before graduation. And so I went back. I fell back into graphic design. This sounds like a real struggle. This is a struggle story.
But you didn't have struggles, sir. You already said that.
Well, no. Now I'm thinking back.
We're bringing up bad memories here. So.
Yeah, we're bringing up memories. This is my struggles. This is my struggle story. So I applied. I was like, okay, I graduated Full Sail. My second daughter was born a month after I graduated. She's like, planned to the day. You might remember this, actually.
I remember. Don't you worry.
So my second daughter was coming, and I was like, okay, I need a job. I will fall back, and I will look for QA jobs. It's in the game industry. It's QA. Everybody says QA is a good job, which they are, by the way. They're awesome ways to get in. And so I started applying for every QA job I could find in Full Sail area because I didn't want to move. And so I got a job. I got an interview at what was the EA studio in Tiburon. I got an interview there for QA, and super excited because I'm like, I'm gonna nail this QA job. I can do this. And I the day I was supposed to have my interview is when the day my daughter was born. So I missed the interview for the birth of a child. But child was born, it's like, crap, now I really need a job. And so I started just calling everywhere because I had graphic design experience. And I had been sending out resumes, and I started calling everywhere that I had sent a resume to, because I was just so desperate. And like, I'm not that outgoing, but I was just so desperate. And so I remember calling places from the hospital, from the waiting room, just following up if they had any questions about my resume. And this guy for this print shop answered, and he said, well, we thought you were too experienced, so we didn't call you back. And I said, I am not too experienced. I'll take any job. And it was a job redesigning bags of dirt. So this is my struggle story. So I designed bags of dirt. Like when you go to Home Depot and you buy a bag of dirt, the label, I didn't even get to design them. I redrew them. So like they would say, here's the bag of dirt. But it was like when this place was like still business from another printing company, they would need the artwork redrawn. And so I redrew bags of dirt labels.
It sounds very creative.
Yeah, but the whole time, like every night, you know, after everyone falls asleep, like you get back and you work on your game portfolio. And
I have to tell you, Nathaniel, that this sounds a lot like a struggle story. You should basically.
Oh, is it?
Remember this for future. So this is the struggle story. I mean, but also I think what's great about your story is it shows grit and determination. It's like you didn't give up. It's like something you really wanted and you pursued. And I think that you put the time in, even in your after hours. I mean, you have a family at this point. You had 2 kids, and you're going to make it happen no matter what. And I think that's great, and I respect you even more for that. So.
Oh man, you've never said you respected me.
I'm telling you now, on a massive streaming
And the
thing,
call.
in the call itself, and I'm whispering, he's not very good at bomber, man. But like, no, but he's like exactly. I'm saying that I think that's a very well-deserved trait that most.
It ended okay. I mean,
so, of course, yeah. Look where you are. You look.
I still design the bags of dirt at night.
just for fun now.
I still have one of the bags.
Yeah, exactly. That's great. So this question, obviously, I mean, we are a school, so I'm going to go ahead and bring it up. This is, you know, and this is probably a little touchy, but do you think that your degree helped you gaining access to the game industry as a whole, or to get your foot in the door? I mean,
yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And the big thing is too is so of like basically like a sampler platter of the whole development pipeline. And so it gave me, which people who went to other schools do not have the same I can't think of the same sample platter. Like they went to a school and they studied modeling, but I was able to go in and I knew, you know, a little bit about rigging. I never ever wanted to be a rigger. I've never enjoyed it, but I knew enough about a process where I can rig something really quickly to get something in the game quickly, you know, to like prototype or same thing for lighting, animation even. I'm not an animator, but heck, I know how to set a keyframe. I know some animation basics. I can make something squash and stretch, you know, and later hand it to somebody. But that has been invaluable. Like just that little bit, enough knowledge to get yourself in trouble, but enough knowledge to convey an idea.
Gotcha.
I don't think of myself as a traditional artist either, but you know, I got a sampling of that, and yes, very much so. Even when it comes to just being able to talk to other artists with common terms, you know, I learned a lot of those terms from school. It's just that common language.
No, I think it's great. I'm just there's tons and tons of questions. I'm trying my best to filter through them here. So let's see. Oh, I'm graduating from school next November. My focus is on hard surface modeling and 3D animation. Where would you say I could start? Meaning the direction should someone take? Living near LA has lots of options, or I think he's trying to talk about more of the location. Do you think location is important when trying to apply for jobs?
It was. Who knows going forward now that everybody's had a taste of working from home or having workers remotely, that may change things. Definitely, I had to live in LA for a while because that's where work was. Even as contractors, a lot of companies expect you to come into the office and be a contractor from the office. So yeah, I never had a desire to live in LA, but I had to, you know, when I worked for Insomniac.
Four or 5 years. So
But that's part of the industry.
I'm going to couple a couple of these together because we are getting a lot of them. How important do you think your networking was, even now versus then? You know, like, was it networking very important for you to get into the industry? This is actually a student question. I did not make this up. So, and did you find the process stressful?
I would say the working is hell. I mean, I'm not a very outgoing person, so I've always struggled with networking.
Okay.
Networking did not give me my first job or my first full-time job, but once I started working there, I made friends, and that studio ended up closing down for a while, and I guess that is networking. Those friends that I made there,
Yeah.
a group of us ended up going to Insomniac. Insomniac hired, I think, 5 of us from that studio when it closed down. But those were all close friends, and that networking helped there. And I've me hire people before. You know, people put in a good word, or they know this person, which is better than just a resume and a portfolio if someone can vouch for them. So it is, you know, we're people, and we tend to trust other people's words if they know something better than just a piece of paper.
That's true.
Yeah.
Peers of your friends, you would hope they had their best interests at heart, right? So
I mean, and on the flip side, people's it has kept people from being hired, you know, when they say, yeah, I worked with that person and they're a jerk. You know,
so that's why it's to be respectful. So full circle.
Anti-networking.
Yeah. There's a couple of questions about, like, well, if you were given the green light to work on any project you want and money was not an issue, and even if it's outside of Insomniac, is there something that you would still want to do now?
Say that again. So I can work on anything.
You can work on anything. It could be a game, it could be a film, it could be a commercial. It can be anything you want. And if money was no option, no time period was an option, and it doesn't even have to be at Insomniac, it could be just the dream thing that you still have it on the bucket list here.
What would it be?
What would it be?
Man,
that's a deep one. I didn't even come up with that. That's some sweet. I'm gonna ask that guy to write the next ones.
You know, something I have always. This ventures a little away from like the digital creation or digital content. I've always wanted to make some kind of digital mix installation. I don't know what it would be, but whenever I see them at museums or places, I always think, one of these days. So some kind of art installation that mixes, you know, it falls back to the tangible, but is also digital in some way. You know, I love to see the projections, where they project on buildings. You know, it maps projection mapping. Yeah. Something, you know, as I progress in my career, right now I'm more in a tangible phase. So something like that, something that
Oh, those are really cool. I've seen a lot of cool ones, so that's definitely neat. Someone asked, do you still draw? Do you still life draw? Do you find yourself drawing?
Like once a year, I try to force myself, and I buy like a new like sketchbook and like pencils.
Gotcha.
And then I get hung up on the thing that you're not supposed to get hung up, where you're like, what do I put on the first page? It sets the tone. And then you draw something up, tearing it out, and then you're like, oh no, my first page is tore out. Everybody will know. So I don't draw a lot anymore. My middle daughter is an avid painter. She paints watercolor and acrylic. But I just daughter's in college and she's going to school. She's for art, so I think she's starting to appreciate some of my skill set now that I can help her more. So
That's good.
But it's the kind of thing where it's like it's always been that way. So
Okay.
it's just up to them.
No, that's fair.
Ratchet's always been part of their life.
That's true. I'm going to combine a couple here because we have a couple about it. Can you give us? I know you obviously were environment artists so most people want to know like what's a normal day in the life of an artist, like when you start your day or the process. It's like as much as you could divulge, because I think work culture is very important for these guys to understand like what it's actually like.
I mean, normal day changes depending on what point of production you're in. But like when you're in the thick of production, a normal day would be working with a small group of people, there's teams within teams. And the way that we've always broken it up was so yes, you're on the Ratchet team as an environment artist, and then within the environment team there is maybe 4 teams of 3 people that are each have their levels they work on, and so you work closely with those people, and then within that level you've split it up into areas or zones, and so closely with other people. There's a lot of sharing because you need to blend everyone's work together. But you do have a lot of ownership over your areas. So a normal day would be, we usually reseat the office, several times throughout the year, because you're kind of sitting with people that you're usually working with. And so you'll be sitting with pods of 4 is what we typically have. And so you'd be sitting with the other artists that you're working with, or maybe one of the other artists you're working with and one of the gameplay programmers that's also working on the level that you're working on, because those other departments get split up in a similar way. So you are working with people outside of your department, but it's a lot of collaboration. I've always felt like I've had a ton of ownership. I've gotten to work within the vision of the game. You can usually get what your ideas in. But a typical day, yeah, is probably, let's say it's an 8-hour day. I mean, it might be more sometimes, but maybe you have an hour, maybe 2 of meetings. That's on the long. But then the rest of the day is you're creating content. Within that hour or 2 meetings, that's like, kind of spontaneous. Like everyone turn around and rough, sketch on a pad of paper in the cube. There's a lot of that. We like to do that. Every cube has big marker boards to sketch out ideas.
Do you feel everybody in your company has a voice as an influence of the game?
I would like to say so. I've always felt like I did when I wanted to. Maybe other people wouldn't feel the same way, but I've always tried to be respectful of that responsibility too, and speak up about important things, and not just, hey, I have an idea. So, I mean, I think that's part of it too, is not necessarily knowing your place, but.
No, I think I agree with you. I mean, in some cases it goes both ways, right? So, I mean, like if you're asking for this feature that's like unbelievably is never, you have to rein it in a little bit and understand that stuff needs time to code and things of that nature. Be able to talk to somebody about your craft is huge.
Yeah.
So,
and I think that two-way goes too, even on the day-to-day basis, where you really need to be comfortable with people giving you feedback. Like I've worked with people that are not comfortable with that, and there's always an excuse. Like because someone gives you feedback doesn't necessarily mean that you have to implement it, but you need to be comfortable receiving it, and you need to be able to digest it. And a real reason other than like, no, that's not my idea, right?
Yeah.
Because your chances are you're probably going to give someone feedback at some point too, and you want their feedback to be listened to. So I think that like you're saying, that two-way communication is like nonstop.
And I want to stress that for the current students or anyone that's watching right now, is like that communication is just as important with your instructor as it is with somebody you're talking to within the industry. I find it very, always tell people it's like the habits that you're forming now will echo for the next 30 years of your time in whatever you do. So you can't just say that I'm all of a sudden now going to be the great communicator. It's something that you have to work at and strive to want to do better. I think in my mind, that's something I can really stress. So when your teachers are reaching out to you guys about your assignments and stuff, and just think about it like a job scenario. If your boss was like, hey, how's that project going? You're not just going to ghost him for 2 or 3 days. You're gonna be like, hey man, I'm working on it. So it's like you got to let them know, and I think that's very important for people to understand. That's a part of life. That's not just a part of like work. It's just general.
Well, and that's the thing is being in a creative profession, I think, is incredibly stressful because you're always under the gun, and you're always competing, right? You're always competing to be the best, your title, your individual artwork. And so it is very like lizard brain to just like, oh, I'm so busy, or I don't want to take that feedback, or they don't understand. But I think like you're saying, like communication and just being like honest is so key, and being honest to yourself, like why you don't want feedback or why you disagree with feedback, like that honesty loop.
No, I think it's great.
Like it's no one, well, maybe unless like if as long as you've surrounded yourself with good people, no one's going to give you feedback to like beat you down, right? Like,
well, I mean, you would hope everybody at your company is there to make the best game possible, right?
Yeah,
so,
right.
I mean, it's the way you would look at it, right? So, there's a couple other questions here. So it's like, Any suggestions, and I think this is probably an online student, like if I had to guess here. So any suggestions on how you would keep your head level with your education? Because obviously you went through school, because a lot of these people are working at the same time as going to school. Any
Yeah.
suggestions for keeping that strong motivation in general?
I mean,
That's a tough one. So.
yeah, it's tough. Like I think like that's a scenario where you can get burned out real fast because you're going to come home from the end of the day already done, right? I can only say the way I would handle it would be, maybe this is my personality, but I would definitely have to schedule it out. And if I had, with my spouse, like be on the same level about the schedule, like from this point to this point, I need this time to focus on education. I may need more, I will let you know, but definitely like reserving blocks of time if possible is how I'm just thinking if I was in that situation is how I would have to do it. And you're giving yourself that deadline, right?
Yeah. No, I mean that's a fair thing to think about.
I could not approach it like I'll work on school when I have a chance. That's just my personality because I would get hung up doing other things. So just hold hold yourself accountable.
I'm trying to read. There's literally, they keep pouring in, and I'm doing my best. I promise, guys. Have you ever worked on a game for a long period of time, and then all of a sudden, it got canceled? And
not all of a sudden. Like you can always feel it. You can always feel like, well, this kind of sucks. Yeah, I mean, the big one would be when I worked, the first company I worked at, I worked there for like a year and like a day. And then I worked there, I started at the end of a project and I finished out a project. And then we were working on the sequel. And then we all got laid off. And it was literally like it was pretty sudden. It was, hey, you can keep coming into the office and work on your portfolio for about the next 2 weeks, but we no longer have a company.
Ouch.
We could keep coming into the office for the next 2 weeks because the doors weren't being locked. So that was canceled and out of a job.
Ouch. That does sound a little painful. A couple of people had some questions about the Magic Leap titles. They wanted to know if the concepts were done in-house or were they outsourced to a company called Creature Box Guys. So something along those lines. And then
We're done in-house They were done in-house by Dave and Greg, who do Creature Box.
Okay.
I work with. Yeah.
Okay, there you go. How important would you think learning VR and AR technology is today into relationship to their art? So should we focus more on art or focus more on the technology?
I'm going to combine the two and say you need to focus on the art within the constraints of technology. Okay. And I say that not as like a get out of the question, but because the art that I have been able to do, or the art that I do, has changed drastically based on the platform it was done for. So art for the PS3 is drastically different than art from the PS4, even how I went about it. Art for VR is drastically different because you're still trying to get the same look, but you have different limitations. Art for Magic Leap is even more because it's actually kind of mobile processor. And so you always have these limitations for your platform that your art needs to live within. So you need the foundations of art, of how to do art and what your art, those skills. But part of your skills are also how to work around the limitations.
Okay. How do you feel about people applying as generalist versus specialist?
I think my take on it would be is that generalists don't actually exist. Like generalists, you always hear people talk about them. I've never I've never hired a generalist. I've never seen a job posting for a generalist at Insomniac. I've never had a friend that was a generalist at other companies. It's like an art school fallacy. You do need to be a specialist of a skill set. So, I mean, I think like character modeling, character artist is like a skill set, or environment artist. Maybe like when you get there, it might even get broken down more. It might be a character modeler and somebody else textures. So I think you need the generalist skill set because you can sure plug in to a lot more places. But I'm not saying that they don't exist, but in 14 years, we've never had a generalist.
So let me rephrase. I think I understand what you're saying. So you're saying it's good to have a broad spectrum of everything, but you still believe that someone should be a specialist in a certain area.
Yes.
That's right. Okay.
I think having that broad knowledge is very important.
Okay.
But you do need to be a rock star at something.
Okay.
Right.
So this one's probably more of in-house. How does
a generalist?
Okay.
I mean,
So, one of the questions was, how does Insomniac handle in-house training? Like when you have emerging technology and things of that nature, do you guys workshop it together? Or is there one person that learns it and then divulges it to the team?
I mean, we handle it a couple of ways. Like when there's new technology for internal stuff, it's usually like presentations or beta testers for internal technologies. As far as just keeping skills up, if anybody needs to buy any kind of software, usually as long as they can apply it towards their job in some way, like as long as they're not like wanting software to like audio software when they're a character artist, usually purchase that, or any kind of training, online courses we purchase. We have a couple subscriptions to various training sites. And then it usually works out to be maybe once a year, but it's definitely at the end of every project. We do what we call blue sky times, which is 2 weeks usually, and it's kind of just 2 weeks, no questions asked, to work on, explore something. And there has been people who have like explored, like artists that explore scripting or something during that time, or explore, other engines. Other than that, like I've always just tried to align my learning with what I'm working on at the time. So I'm kind of learning something new with the goal of finishing something on my plate.
Okay. I'm combining a couple questions on this next one because a couple of them are asking bits and pieces. So it has to do with software. Like at this point, you've been doing this for a long period of time, and you probably know a lot of different software. And your studio probably has a lot of different software. So do you think it's important to focus on learning tons and tons of software versus actually staying in one software and getting really, really good at one skill set?
So I can only speak to my experiences.
That's fine.
Insomniac is most of my experience at this point.
Okay.
But the way that we've always looked at it is so we use Maya mainly, but at one point in history, it was like everything needs to be done in Maya. That's what we use. But then there was people that were like, but Maya is not great at everything. And the transition has been where everything needs to be able to get to Maya, because that's what we support as far as exporters and engine.
Gotcha.
And so you can work in Maya, but you can work in anything you want to and get it into Maya, as long as you can get it into the engine. And here are the things that we support to get into the engine. And so software is so good now about file formats that everything talks to everything. And so but not everybody does that. But so the focus is are you able to create your art to a quality level that it needs to be? You can do it however you want, as long as you can get it in game and it's performant. So I use Houdini a lot now. A lot of people don't, and that's fine. So it's like a lot of people. I've never enjoyed ZBrush, and I've spent my whole career trying to avoid ZBrush. I haven't had ZBrush installed on my computer in 10 years. I have other ways to do it. And so it's not so much about what software you know, how much you know about certain softwares or how many softwares. I think it's about the end result. And if the end result just needs to be a render, hell, anything renders now. But the limitation of the end result needs to be game res, which whatever game res now is, there's your limitation.
Okay.
So like, I think for someone going into a game career now, your end result should be, I need to be able to get it into Unreal and take a screenshot. So there's your limitations. I have to be able to get it in Unreal and screenshot, but you can create it in anything. As long as you can get geometry and textures.
Yeah, let's see here. I'm going to combine another couple here. So obviously you went through a couple different roles at Insomniac. Do you have one that you thought was like really, really fun? And also, what is your favorite thing you've worked on? And obviously, what did you find to be the biggest, struggle a little bit? Maybe your least favorite, but you're still making games, so you're still happy about it. So like, probably one of the hardest challenges. Probably a better way to phrase that.
Yeah. What was the first part of that?
Out of your different positions, was there one that you just thought was extremely fun?
Extremely
Okay.
fun. I mean, they've all been fun for the skill level I was at the time. And every time I was at a skill level, I was like, man, I don't think I could handle anything more than what I can handle now. But you just continue to grow. So it's always been fun. When I started in Insomniac, I thought, like, if I ever become a senior, that's the shit. And now if somebody told me I was a senior, I'd be like, what the fuck? No. So I've always enjoyed the level I was at. The most challenging, I think, was maybe creative direction and maybe lead too. And lead I found challenging because it's kind of a little bit of a switcheroo where you've built up this career based on your craft. And now part of your responsibility is building up other people's craft, which is a whole skill set in itself, and managing people is a skill set, and managing a team and keeping everybody on track. That's just a completely different skill set than what it took for you to get there. And it usually takes you a while. It usually takes you to the point of doing it terribly for you to like come to Jesus or whatever term. You got to be doing it really bad. And so I enjoyed being a lead, but I did not enjoy things about it. I did not enjoy managing people. And that's where it's like, look, this isn't for me. And so I moved to a different position. Creative direction was the same way, as in it was a whole new skill set because I had moved from an artist position or a lead into that. And there's just so much more to worry about. Like you're worrying about every aspect of the game. You're worrying about narrative, about writing. You're worried about voice actors. You're worried about things getting done on time. You're constantly having to adjust your vision because of limitations. You have to have a vision, and you can't fake that for very long. I tried. Like pretty soon it comes out that you have no idea what you actually want. So there is a lot of, like, you do really great art for a lot of years, but then you have to continue to grow outside of that.
Wow. I think that's great. A bunch of people are very interested in portfolios here, so let me talk a little bit about that because I can see a bunch of questions popping up. for let's say, for instance, most of your background has been in an environment. Is that correct? If I say
Yeah.
so. Okay. Most people want to ask the question of what you would want to see on an environment reel, for one. Let's start there. And then we had another question of, do you think it's important to tailor your reel? Like if you're applying for Insomniac and do you want to see characters like Insomniac characters on the demo reel when applying to Insomniac? So it shows like a relevance to, to what they want to do? Or do you think it's better to have diversity in your demo reel and show different levels?
About the tailoring, I'd say yes and no. It's not required, but it's nice, right?
Yeah.
The downside of that is if you really tailor it, now you're submitting something to someone who really knows a lot about the style that you're trying to emulate, and they'll just pick it to pieces, right?
Yeah.
But it is nice and where I've got portfolios of people I work with now where they were clearly fans of the franchise.
Yeah.
And you can see it, and you feel a brotherhood. But it's not necessary at all. Like I would not say it leans one way or the other, because what a good artist that's looking at portfolios is looking for is good art, and the style, regardless of the style. You can see that in any style. So I don't think it has to be by any means,
Okay.
but it is nice when you do see it. It makes you feel warm,
Yeah, but what about what you would want to see as an environment artist?
So what I would want to see is I want to see lots of shots around scenes. I don't want to just see like an opening shot of a single scene. I want to see shots I want to see that, but I also want to see areas within that. I'm personally not a big fan of like video playthroughs of areas, just because it's kind of hard to parse. So I do like, it's fine to have that, but I do like stills, and I like to see composition of like composition as a whole, but I like to see composition of individual areas. So like everyone does the broken down train station, or the partially destroyed building with lots of rubble. I like to see shots of composition of the rubble, how it's laid out. I just don't want to see just that one opening shot. I want to see all the little stories that you're telling as you move around that space. And I guess that's what I'm looking forward to, is there's the story of the scene, right? Of this is a building that's dilapidated and the spray painted wood. But I want to see the little stories. This broke apart and it crumbled here and it smashed this. So I'm looking for that. I'm looking for the stories and the details.
So you're looking for an overall vision, but then you want small narratives within the environment.
Yeah.
Okay.
Character development.
There you go. What about how many of those? Environments are huge. So on the portfolio, you say you want to see multiple pieces, but do you consider that one piece?
Yeah, and I think for environment, especially from a student, or even from somebody in the industry where they didn't maybe do everything for the entire level, it doesn't have to be a massive area, but I do want to see a lot of details. So it could be one room, but I want to see those little stories around the room.
Okay. Oh, that's good. That's good.
Because that's something we get a lot. Is just not enough. We just get that beauty shot of everything from a distance.
I think this guy's, whoever asked this, is after my own heart here. He said, what would you think is one of the most sought after jobs in the industry? He goes, I know rigging's very important and a lot of companies want it. So I was like, yay, rigging. But what do you think is like one that right now you see the trend of like, this is highly in demand?
Man, I don't know if anyone is more in demand than the other. It's just,
okay.
Games are getting so big and they're needing so many people that I think there's a need for, I think evenly, just teams are getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So I think whatever you pick, you have as long as you have the skills, your chances are as good as anything. Like maybe, because we're talking about writing, maybe there's probably less writers because those teams are typically smaller. You might have 20 environment artists and for writers. But as far as in the art field, like I don't know if anyone is in more demand than the other.
Mhm. So this is, I think this is a great question. It's not one that I really thought of, but I wish I would have. Um, if you bring somebody in for an interview, we assume at that point that you like their artwork. What are some other characteristics that, or what is your primary characteristics of the interview? What are you looking for at that point?
So we looked at the portfolio and called them in for an interview. That's where we're at.
Or a phone call interview or in-person
Like
interview?
first in person.
Yes, okay.
Just a normal person. Like somebody who is able. Someone who is able to talk about their work.
So you think it's very important?
To someone who's able to have a conversation about their artwork. And I don't think that is knowing all the right terms necessarily, though that helps, that common language that we talked about, but who is able to just discuss art. And if I say, so I like this piece, tell me a little bit about it. Tell me, someone who's able to tell me about it, like why they chose that piece, what they like about it. Just someone who's able to have a conversation about their work. It's a conversation about you, so you should be able to talk about you. You'd be surprised at how many people can't talk about themselves. It is a moment where you need to be a little bit of a salesman without being too arrogant.
I make pretty much a lot of the online classes do reflection videos, and I think you're just reassuring that right now. So I want to just point out to my staff that, see, he said it's important. There you go. I think it's very good to reflect on your artwork, to be able to talk about it. I think that's huge. So I think that's a big part of it. To really tailor that just a little bit more, their question was, do you think your questions to that point are more technology based as well, and you go deeper into that, or is it just personality, which is what you're basically saying?
It's both. It's both.
Okay, so it's a little of both.
Yeah, like we'll ask a lot of art questions, and then technical questions like how the art was technically created, or about past experiences. A big thing that a trap that people put themselves in is people will go negative really fast, and you need to be very aware of not doing that. Well, they'll go negative about why this isn't to the level that this piece could have been better if, or they'll start just making excuses, even though you've never accused them of it not being good enough. They'll go down this excuse train, or they'll talk about past employers in a negative light. Like, it's just not the place for that. And it'll really turn people off in the room, because then you just come across as.
So can I reiterate just a little bit? So what you're saying is it's probably important for these people to maybe do some practice runs of just doing an interview with a friend, maybe, of like, this is how I would approach this kind of conversation, because you're going to be asked technical questions, and it's good not to get defensive, is what you're saying, right?
Yeah.
Or to bag on your own work. I mean, don't do that for sure, because you're there to show off your work. I mean, that I definitely agree with that. You want to try to put your best foot forward as much as possible. And a couple of the questions were obviously, I think, related to that was overcoming self-doubt. I think that's kind of related as well. And what do you do to do that as a student coming out of school? Because that's going to be in their mind. They're charging forward to get a job. And then I guess on the same topic, people are saying, should I be applying for more internships or just go straight for the full job? Because most companies ask for 3 years industry experience. If they saw a kick-ass demo reel that was just amazing, do you think it would just overcome that year barrier?
Yes, but you probably don't have it, but yes.
Okay.
I mean, I would apply for everything. Like, what's it gonna hurt? They have to look at 300 resumes anyways, so B301. Yeah, I would apply for anything, because you just need something. But yeah, like, they'll say 3 years, but a good portfolio will get you past that.
Gotcha. Let's see, working through this. I got to touch on the fanboys a little bit. I mean, obviously we all love Ratchet and Clank. So if someone wants to know, is PC in the future? Are you allowed to say, is Ratchet and Clank going to make it to the PC? Sorry, guys. He's not answering that question today. So I had to put it out there when somebody asked. I wanted to make sure I touched on it. As he sips his coffee, and we'll just stay really quiet. That's completely fine. This is a good one, kind of following back, finally getting back to some of the earlier questions. You mentioned ArtStation as an acceptable product.
Mm-hmm.
Would you lean one way or the other? Do you think like ArtStation is almost advertising to other artists, or would you rather, you think you have a stronger chance by having an independent website? So
I'll say it feels a little cleaner and a little more memorable when it is just your website. Like you're saying, like a lot of times with ArtStation, you'll once they're done looking at your art, like you kind of get distracted and start clicking other thumbnails. So it is acceptable. You know, lots of people use it for a portfolio. I between the two, I'd lean towards a Squarespace website, or a competitor, but I would lean towards a standalone. Just like when I've looked through 10 resumes that morning, because I'll break them up. I'll look through a group in the morning every morning. Like I'll remember the ones a little better that were on the standalone site because they have more of an identity, I guess.
okay. Back to in-house questions a little bit. Let's see. Do you know how they obtained the rights from Marvel for Spider-Man? And did you know anything about that, or were you just told where Spider-Man's being developed? And then the second question is, are storyboards a thing in your game industry, or is it more just character concept sheets?
I know nothing about there is the whole business side of the game
Yes.
industry as well, and that is a whole nother
person's job.
Yeah.
It's another person's job.
So
Nathaniel, why don't you know the answer to every single question we're answering tonight?
How do you feel about
We just expect you to know. So I think it's great. I appreciate you answering all the questions. That's definitely a huge part of this.
as far as the storyboards, yes, there is lots of storyboards. We've had like a storyboard kind of artist who was actually that works with the animators for cinematics. I believe he was an animator himself and kind of moved into a storyboard role. But it's not like a lot of times animators or storyboard are their own work. So we have had that be a role before. It's not every project has it. And so it is and it isn't.
Okay. We're going to go just a little bit longer. I don't want to keep you all night, and I do appreciate your time. But I'm trying to ask as many questions as I'm seeing here. I think you already addressed this, but you definitely feel that a game testing job would help them get their foot in the door while they're still developing a portfolio?
Yeah, I think I did not go through that route, but I think QA is a great foot in the door position. It puts you in the industry. It puts you next to people doing what you want to do. Lots of companies have initiatives to hire within QA. I mean, you can, at Insomniac, a lot of people have come from QA that have made it to high up positions. I know people from QA now that ask for critiques, or we do we call them mentorships, where you can ask someone to be a mentor, and the two of you decide how often you want to meet and go over what topic you want to go over. And so sometimes it's a mentorship just about navigating the industry. Sometimes it's a mentorship about art, or just learning new skills. And QA has access to that. So I think it's a great way to start making connections and start learning more about the industry you want to be in.
Yeah. And you think that kind of goes back to the job hiring and getting past that 3-year barrier, is more of the peer critiquing and networking and making friends and putting yourself out there a little bit to show your work is because, you know, I know for a fact if I see something cool, I'm going to pass it around to my friends.
Yeah.
So I think it's a good way for probably someone that's more, you know, introverted to get some networking that's just posting your artwork up on ArtStation and things like that, just to get some people following you to, you know, drive up some of the
Well,
love, basically. So.
And it's happened to me before where someone in QA will see something that you did in the game, you know, while they were testing, and they come up to you and say, "Hey, how did you do that?" And then you sit down with them and you walk them through it. Like that's pretty awesome experience right there. So.
Well, let's see here. I'm seeing. There's a lot of. Was there any creative projects that you can remember that maybe put you out of your comfort zone a little bit, and you had to grind a little bit to learn more, or would that be every project because you're always learning? So.
Yeah, most projects typically have a point where it starts to feel like a grind, you know, especially towards the end.
Okay.
It happens. It's part of it.
No, you're definitely. We're definitely grinding that, guys. We're doing it. We're almost there. So let's see here. I definitely have some people that are interested in asking, does Insomniac even have intern applications or positions?
Yeah, we do interns every year.
Every turn, and that's, is it is it like a summer program? Is that normally what it is? Or
yes, and usually it's up to the team lead if they have the bandwidth to take on an intern.
Yeah.
So not every team has an intern every year, but most usually do, and it's paid. It's a paid position. We have hired interns afterwards. Not everyone gets hired, but I mean, yeah.
I'm basically going to leave it down to these last, just a couple more questions because the list keeps growing, and we'd be here all night if I keep taking them. So this poor guy's been waiting forever. So he's probably interested in creating his own indie video game. Would you recommend that as a route to get into the industry to show your skill sets? I think that's interesting because there's a lot more software out there that we could do this, and that indie game companies are very popular.
Yeah. So this is a very new phenomenon, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Like when I started, you couldn't get your hands on an engine. They didn't exist unless you worked for a company. I would say as long as it's a portfolio piece in the end, right? So I don't see anything wrong with it. I think maybe one of the disadvantages is if you take on an indie game, your focus of what you have to accomplish kind of gets diluted. So say you're applying to be an artist, you're probably going to be responsible for a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
And so that time that you have to dedicate to your portfolio gets diluted a little bit, because now you're getting now you have to start scripting something in Unreal. But I have seen indie games on portfolios. I will say I've never played an indie game as a portfolio piece. I think that would, I don't know if I would really put the time into it though, but a lot of the younger people now, I know they had all worked on indie projects like right out of school or during school that they had in their portfolio. So.
No, I think that's a great question. I'm going to couple this one, since this will be our last question, guys. I'm so sorry. There's a bunch of people that want to know, what would you suggest for a character animator? What would you suggest for a character modeler? And what would you suggest for special effects artists, all related to games? What would you expect to see on like a demo reel for that position? Or what should they try to be learning?
I can't talk too much about the animation because that's out of my wheelhouse. So I apologize for that. That is a little too far from what I'm comfortable answering. As far as
that's okay,
character modelers and effects artists, I mean, character modelers, a big part of it is seeing topology, right? They want to see they don't want to see just ZBrush sculpts. And that does happen a lot, where you just get the very high res ZBrush sculpt. That's only part of it. They want to see that plus, you know, the limitations of a game engine. So I would show that in an engine with your topology on some shots with the topology on top. And then I don't think it's necessary to also be. I think a lot of character artists coming out of school think they also need to be like a character concept artist. Like, here's the concepts I drew. That's not necessarily important. I think it's fine to work off other people's concepts.
But you just told me you sit beside a concept artist anyway, so he's going to give you the drawings,
that's
right? So that's his job. Let him do it.
And he's not modeling characters.
So, I mean, the very last question is, I think I already know the answer to this, but I think it's clear to me you love what you do, and you probably would not change a thing, but I'd let you speak for that along the way. But it sounds like you're still very passionate about video games and the direction that they're going. But what do you feel right now? Are you, after 17 years of me knowing you? Yeah. You're still grinding away, and I've known you for a very long time, and I will tell you guys that every time I've talked to this guy, both of us are always talking about new tech, new technology, and things that we're always trying on the side to better ourselves as artists. And obviously we're talking about families too. We don't just talk about nerd stuff, but it's definitely something I want you guys to be aware that even at my age and Nathaniel's age, I think we're always striving to do better. It is a competitive field, and I just love art, so that kind of motivates me to want to do better. So is that how you still feel at this point? Because you're still learning every day.
Yeah, for sure. Like I really enjoy. I think that's what I really enjoy about the game industry. I mean, maybe the film industry is the same, but I don't think it is. But I really enjoy the constant leveling up of technology and skill sets to keep up with technology and being on the cutting edge. I just being able to grow. That is something I really enjoy about this job. So I can't imagine having thinking back, I can't imagine having a job where I just have the one skill set and I just do that skill. My job has changed 100% since when I first got in, even just as an environment artist, just because of the change of technology and the expectations and the styles of games, genres come and go. And so there is so much change that there's always something new. And that's the main thing I love. It's just, there's always something new, and there's always a chance to learn something new.
Well, Nathaniel, I personally want to thank you, and on behalf of obviously our friendship, I've known you forever, and I'm telling you, I do appreciate you taking the time to talk to us tonight and being really honest. I think it's been a really honest talk, and I think it's really good for the students to know. And my major things and takeaways that I want to kind of drive home is that he talked a lot about iteration and push and drive, and it is going to be hard work. And I really feel, like I said, the whole point of starting to do these talks in general is to get you guys more active in the community. We have a Discord channel for the online students, and I want you guys to start blowing that up with artwork and just put it yourself out there. And don't be afraid to produce art. Feedback is good. I mean, feedback is good. Like, I know it's scary to get feedback, and no one at the beginning liked to be critiqued, but you got to understand what he said. In the real world, the people that we're all on board with you becoming a better artist. And I think that's going to be the big strive, is that you got to understand that you love art and you're going to do anything possible to improve yourself. So I think that's a big talk about this, and the grind in general, iteration. And I can't thank you enough, man. And I appreciate you taking the time, and, you know.
Yeah, I think you said it like, a better way to say it is, yeah, I love the process of making art.
Yes.
And feedback is part of the everything you just said is part of that process. Like the end result when you get there is pretty, like the glory is pretty short-lived. You're like, it's done, I'm with it, and then you're back into the process again of making something new. That's I think that's what we crave.
So I think that is what you crave. I mean, even with outside when you're working on wood carving and things like that, you like the creative process.
Yeah.
Working on something. I think that's great.
Yeah, the end result is, I don't even play the games when they're done.
Yeah. I hope everybody enjoyed my talk with Nathaniel here. It's like two old friends just sitting here bickering back and forth the whole time. I hope you guys enjoyed watching, and I hope you got a lot of your questions answered. If anybody else has any other questions that you would like answered, feel free to direct them straight to me, knorman@lafilm.edu, and I'll make sure to get the answers from Nathaniel if you weren't able to ask them tonight. But everyone else, to everyone online, to everyone on campus, and to our online students, thank you guys. Thanks for joining. Thank you, Nathaniel, for joining. And everybody have a great night. So,
Night, guys.
good night, guys.